άρχισε η οδύσσιά μου. Ο γουλιάδος μου, ο Ερίκος ο Σεβίλιας, ο οποίος ήταν στο Auschwitz με τον αριθμό, πέθανε με τον αριθμό.
Ερίκος Σεβίλιας από την Αθήνα.
Anton Mason was about 18 when he was liberated by American soldiers at Buchenwald. He had survived Auschwitz, where most of his family was murdered.
I found out my father was dead, and I was truly at the end of my life. I said, I don't know if I can go on. But there is something that's just impossible to explain. I just decided that I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try. And then, out of no place, on April 11th, the Americans arrived. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I said, how is this possible? I walked over to a GI, and young guy, and I asked him if he could give me some food. I was very hungry. So he took out, he gave me a Nestle bar, and he gave me a little gold envelope. It said Nescafe. I didn't know what it was. So he gave me a little food. Now, you know how much that food was worth? He could have gotten anything for it in Weimar, but he gave it to me.
Solly Gnor lay half dead in the snow after a death march from Dachau. He remembers the unshaven, tired soldier who knelt down, gently touched him on the shoulder, and said, "You're free, boy. You're free now." Solly was surprised by the soldier's Japanese features. His liberator, Clarence Matsumura, was a member of a segregated regiment of Nisei soldiers, American children of Japanese immigrants. Clarence smiled at Solly, a smile that stayed with him ever since. Solly has called Clarence his angel. Ironically, African-American GIs like Paul Parks and Leon Bass, and Japanese Americans like Clarence Matsumura, served in segregated units in the U.S. Army. They fought for freedom and democracy, despite facing discrimination at home and within the Army. Nisei soldiers celebrated the survivors' freedom, even though racial tension and fear during the war had caused many of their own families to be interned in camps in the U.S.
For countless survivors of the Holocaust, that first contact with the liberators was the moment they began to feel safe after years of fear, loss, and rupture. But for many, liberation was the saddest moment of their lives. It was the moment they realized they were completely alone in the world. For many liberators, their first contact with the survivors was a powerful moment of insight. Trained to wage war, many chose to suspend their military missions for the humanitarian mission of giving care and respect to the survivors. The experiences of the survivors and the liberators moved many to become a moral voice, sharing their stories.
I've been trying to give testimony for a long time by just going around and speaking to people. And I think it's important that I speak about what I saw and that others speak about what they saw. Are we looking for credit? No. No one's looking for credit. No one wants a pat on the back. All we want to do is say, will this be prevented from happening again? That's the most basic thing.
Bids a sailor's farewell to his sea home. 60 years old, he joined the Navy in 1902. Naval men on the first discharge list provided the first test for the elaborate Admiralty dispersal arrangements. Petty Officer Manning tackles the first and most popular department of all. After pay, the next job is to choose a civvy suit and all the trimmings. The first since the war started. These shoes won't have to negotiate a heaving deck like the pair he's wearing. After years of a peaked cap and Navy uniform, it's hard to say if civvies look quite the thing. This selection wins approval, but what will the old woman say? BLA men on the first demob groups assemble at the release embarkation camp at Ostend. Their next stop is England and home. The majority for Group 1 release are last war veterans. Younger men embark by the same boat on their way to join a draft for Burma. The Isle of Man mail steamer Ben McCree puts out of Ostend Harbour, first blighty boat of the BLA. Back in England, these men will go through much the same demobbing process as their Air Force comrades. At the demob centre at Uxbridge, the first step is the record and release book. At each department, they tear off a page for records, pay, and all the rest, until you're left with the remainder. Certificate of service, conditions of release, identity card, and...
Box shop, bag shop, cook 'em and book 'em.
The routine visit to the man who says, cough.
Yes, I suppose they've got to have a last look.
There's more to come. Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labour, notification to records, but it's worth it.
Today, one of the most horrific sights of human history was liberated, Auschwitz. One of the major sites of Hitler's final solution. Over 1 million were killed at this death camp. Auschwitz became a symbol of the hatred and horrors human beings are capable of towards each other. It was known as the most brutal network of concentration camps operated during World War II under the Third Reich. The regime ran it for 5 years in Nazi-occupied Poland. Most of the victims were European Jews killed in gas chambers or as a result of starvation, forced labor, disease, or medical experiments. 10 years ago, only 1,000 Holocaust survivors attended the Auschwitz commemorations. Today, that number is 300. In another 10 years, there might be no one left who lived through the terror. And so there is a push to not forget history.
Der Jahrestag der Befreiung des Lagers Auschwitz-Birkenau durch sowjetische Soldaten jährt sich morgen zum 70. Mal. Was geschehen ist, erfüllt uns Deutsche mit großer Scham. Denn es waren Deutsche, die das Leid und den Tod von Millionen Menschen verschuldet oder in Kauf genommen haben.
World leaders are gathering in Poland for commemorations as we speak. This was earlier today. You can see Ukraine's Poroshenko there in the front row. Leaders from neighboring Baltic states, just to name a few. France's François Hollande there as well. Almost feels like someone is missing. President Putin is not at Auschwitz, despite the Red Armies liberating the death camp 70 years ago. Some say he wasn't invited, others he didn't RSVP, but the fact remains many are shocked.
בעברית, לנינה אחותי שאותה חיות הובילו ובהגיעה ללאגר אל הכבשן הטילו. The Russians liberated the camp. The Russians liberated the camp, not the Americans, not the Russians. And makes sense that people of the government, if not Putin, is to be there. It's obvious.